and welcome back to our read through of the New Testament in 2026. We're heading into the third week of February, and here we're going to be reading Mark chapters 3 through 7 this week. Now, so far in the book of Mark, we've seen that Jesus, he's started his ministry, he's teaching, he's healing people, he's casting out demons, and every time he does something new, people ask, well, who is this guy who has such authority, or who is this guy who's able to heal people? Or at one point, Jesus says that he forgives a man's sins, and the Pharisees are like, hold up, only God can forgive sins. Who are you to say this? And so we start to see that there's some conflict with the religious leaders of Jesus' day. And we get to Mark chapter 3, and it starts, he's doing the exact same thing. He's almost throwing fuel on that fire as he goes and he heals a man who has a withered hand on the Sabbath day. So he's not only healing, but he's doing it on the Sabbath, and that is apparently a big no-no in the eyes of the Pharisees. But while the Pharisees and the religious leaders might have their issues with Jesus, there's a lot of people who are starting to follow him, and he chooses his 12 disciples from among the crowds that start to follow him everywhere. And he gathers his disciples, and then he actually starts to teach them a little bit. And he starts teaching the crowds that come to him, and we get this whole nice section in Mark chapter 4 that describes his teaching in parables and how he teaches using these stories that, are maybe difficult to understand at first, but if you dig in and start to look and try to figure out the symbolism in them, then all of a sudden they reveal these great truths about the kingdom of God. Now, after teaching in Mark chapter 4, he decides to go across the lake, and along the way, this storm comes up, and the disciples are terrified because they're caught in this storm, and Jesus is asleep, and they wake him up, and Jesus wakes up, and he calms the storm, and they even ask, his own followers start to ask, who is this guy that even the wind and the waves obey him? He gets to the other side of the lake, and there's a man with demons, a legion of demons possessing him. Jesus casts out those demons, puts the man back in his right mind. The demons enter the pigs, run down the cliffside into the lake, and then that whole region is like, we don't want anything to do with you. So they send Jesus back across the lake, which means that Jesus, he went all the way across the lake in the boat through the storm just to help that one man. Now, once Jesus gets back, there's a woman who has this physical issue that she wants healing from, but instead of asking Jesus, she just goes up and touches the hem of his garment and is healed, showing that if you have faith, then the healing will come. If you put your faith in Jesus, the healing will come. And then Jesus goes and he actually raises a little girl who was very, very sick. It's unclear if she's like comatose and they think that she's dead, or if she's actually dead. But Jesus raises her from basically the brink of death, if not death itself. And so we see, again, the faith in Jesus brings about healing and powers beyond imagination. Well, in chapter 6, Jesus goes back to his hometown of Nazareth, and he's rejected by the people there because they all know who Jesus is. They don't put their faith in him, and it says that he couldn't do any miracles there because no one had faith. It's about this time that we read about the death of John the Baptist and how this affects Jesus so much that he tries to get away from the crowds and is unable to, is stuck in a remote place where he teaches them because that's who Jesus is. And when they run out of food, he feeds them with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. He feeds over 5,000 people. And then he's able to send the crowds away, and he sends his disciples ahead of him, and he's finally able to have some alone time, but then he has to walk across the lake to rescue the disciples because they're stuck in another storm. And so he comes walking on the water. And it says his disciples were astounded because who is this? Chapter 7 includes much of the same. Jesus starts to challenge the traditions of the Pharisees. The Pharisees had extra traditions that they added on, so that extra rules, so that to make sure that they never actually broke any of God's rules, they had extra rules that they would try to force people to follow that were almost impossible to follow. And at this point, Jesus declares that it's not what goes into someone's body that makes them unclean, but what comes out, what comes from the heart is what makes someone unclean. We see a foreign woman who has faith that God is able to heal her daughter, and he does so for her even after initially seeming to reject her because she's not of the people of Israel, but she has faith. And this is basically what we get to with this section of the book of Mark. That when you put your faith in Jesus, he is able to do amazing things in your life. Heal the sick, cast out demons, raise the dead. But if you don't have faith, then sometimes he's just not able to help you overcome that.